there's one thing in the whole world which you can say lifted Europe out of the bogs of the Dark Ages and put it back onto the path of literacy and prosperity, it's this chair, or rather, it's the ideas that have come to surround it. Because this, you might say, is the throne of Europe. Legend has it, it is actually the throne of Charlemagne. Now, he was the king of the Franks. He ruled an area which was much of France and part of Germany, right down into Italy. And on Christmas Day 800, he was actually crowned an emperor by the Pope in Rome. This northerner was the first Holy Roman Emperor. And when he'd got home again to Germany, to the heart of his empire, to his great palace at Aachen, Charlemagne built himself this fine imperial chapel. The idea, of course, is there is a man, an emperor, sitting on the throne of Christendom who rules all of Europe with a just and fair hand, a pure Christian king, ruling an empire organized and controlled by the Bible itself. The Bible it is in this empire that's going to give people the dignity and the prosperity and the union with God. There are hundreds of stories about Charlemagne. Some of them are probably true too. But one of them is particularly appropriate because it actually tells you quite a lot about the sort of man he must have been. It concerns the emperor sitting up there, looking down at a service on the ground floor of his church, somewhere down there. There's a particularly well-known verger reading from the Bible. This verger was said to be like an Italian in that he perpetually tried to resist the course of nature. It actually meant the poor guy trimmed his fingernails and washed his hair, which was pretty rare. Anyway, as Charlemagne watched him reading the Bible, to his great fascination, a spider started to come down from the ceiling and landed straight on top of this verger's head. Now, the verger must have felt it as it landed, but he was so terrified of the emperor's eye, because Charlemagne was a big man, he didn't muck around with him. He was so terrified of the emperor's eye that he carried on reading the book. And the spider jumped onto his head, ran down his neck, bit him on the neck and killed him. Charlemagne was mortified. He hadn't actually been able to look after the welfare of one of his subjects, and he did penance in his own church for it. It's a good story. It embodies all of Charlemagne's principles: the watching, the education, and the idea of a just ruler. Actually, the man spent most of his life fighting all around the borders of his empire. But when he wasn't fighting foreigners, he was actually fighting for good order inside his own kingdom. He did it by a number of ways. He framed marvelous laws. Charlemagne's laws are the basis of civil law in Europe to this day, education system, anything you can think of. And he also did it too by setting up Bible writing schools inside the monasteries. There were practically no books in Europe. Charlemagne himself was illiterate, but he knew the power of writing and of that book. This beautiful style of writing, developed by Charlemagne's scribes, is not only the ancestor of all Western handwriting, but is also the medium through which the wisdom of the ancient world has come down to us. Most of the oldest surviving manuscripts of classical writing, Cicero, Virgil, and all the rest of them, are copies that were made in Charlemagne's monasteries. It was Charlemagne's Bibles, however, that had the most effect. The four evangelists became the heroes of his brave new world. Cassiodorus' Latin Bible became a standard imperial Bible text. The Bible, the written word of God, was covered in gold, made as precious as a jewel. After Charlemagne's death, though the emperors and courtiers were themselves mostly illiterate, they all thought it was a noble thing, a royal duty indeed, to support scholar monks and pay for them to make fine books. So learning was revived, and Cassiodorus' perfect Latin text came to hold the pith of European wisdom. The Bible had come to stand at the heart of the new Christian civilization that was slowly growing in Northern Europe.